if you're struggling to stay motivated, can't focus for more than a few minutes, and feel like nothing satisfies you anymore, you're not broken. You're being hijacked. Your dopamine system, the very thing that drives you, is being flooded, fried, and fooled. But here's the good news. You can take control. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to rewire it so you can get your drive back, lock in focus, and actually enjoy the rewards of your effort again. Imagine you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is reach for your phone. You scroll through notifications, check Instagram, swipe through TikTok, maybe watch a few reels. For those first 10 minutes, you feel awake, stimulated even. But then something strange happens. When you try to sit down and work, your mind wanders, you can't focus, the task in front of you feels boring, heavy, even a little painful. That's not a coincidence. You've already spent your brain's best dopamine of the day on things that didn't really matter. And now the work that should bring you fulfillment feels like a burden. That's the price of giving away your dopamine too early and too cheaply. Dopamine is like the ignition key to your motivation. When you activate it intentionally, when you save it for meaningful tasks, your drive, focus, and satisfaction soar. But when you let it leak out on small distractions, you're left running on fumes. This is why it's absolutely critical to reserve dopamine for what matters most. Think of dopamine like your brain's internal currency. Every time you experience a hit of pleasure, you're spending that currency. Wake up and scroll through social media, that's a few hundred dopamine coins, gone. Sugar-heavy breakfast, more coins. Watch YouTube while brushing your teeth, gone again. By the time you sit down to build your business, write your thesis, or study for that critical exam, your brain is broke. You've already given away the chemical fuel that powers ambition, focus, and deep satisfaction. Now imagine a different morning. You wake up and instead of going for your phone, you drink water, stretch, maybe step outside for 5 minutes of sunlight. You feel the air. Maybe for the next few moments of your day, you get into a flow. You live your life with less stress. You wake up, you make a cup of coffee, you sit down, you eat food, then you go to bed and you do the whole thing again. You make a simple breakfast without stimulation, no phone, no screen. Then you sit down to work. Something shifts. The task feels more engaging. You're able to lean into it. You're not distracted because you haven't scattered your dopamine. You've saved it. You've protected it like gold. And now it works for you. That's the power of saving your dopamine for what matters. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. You don't have to become a monk or quit social media, but you do have to take control of when and how you use your dopamine. Because if you let the world dictate it, if you let your phone, your cravings, your impulses decide, you'll always feel like you're chasing something and never quite catching it. That's what dopamine dysregulation does. It tricks you into wanting more, even when nothing feels satisfying. Here's a real-life example. Have you ever had a to-do list, and even though it had just 2 or 3 things, you couldn't bring yourself to start? You kept delaying, checking your phone, grabbing a snack, doing anything except the actual task? That's not laziness. That's dopamine mismanagement. Your brain has been trained to expect fast, easy hits, and now the slow burn of real work feels unbearable. But the inverse is also true. The moment you start guarding your dopamine, when you stop giving it away so easily, you start to reclaim your motivation. The boring becomes interesting. The hard becomes manageable. You begin to feel proud of your effort again, not just addicted to the next hit. You realize that motivation isn't something you need to wait for. It's something you can create by managing the chemistry that drives it. So the next time you're tempted to scroll first thing in the morning or binge content before starting your day, remember this: dopamine is powerful, but it's limited. Use it wisely. Save it for your goals, your growth, your purpose. Because when you do, the rewards aren't just external, they're internal. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to build momentum. And that right there is how you change your life. One intentional decision at a time. Imagine sitting down to do something challenging, writing an essay, solving a difficult work problem, starting your workout, and the first thing you do is reach for a cup of coffee, put on your favorite playlist, maybe even grab a little snack. You're trying to get in the mood, right? We all do it. We try to set the perfect vibe before doing something hard. But here's the hidden trap. When you train your brain to associate dopamine and pleasure with rewards before the work starts, you slowly start needing more and more stimulation just to begin.
And without it,
the task feels unbearable. The truth is, you're teaching your brain that you only act when comfort is present. Over time, this turns into a habit loop that makes every effort feel harder than it actually is. The work, which could have been fulfilling in itself, now depends on external crutches. Music, caffeine, entertainment. These aren't bad things, but if you always need them before effort, your dopamine system starts linking joy to the reward, not the process. And that's a huge problem. Let me tell you something powerful. Real success, lasting motivation, comes when you train your brain to find dopamine in the process itself. When you get a hit of satisfaction from doing the hard thing, not from what you do before or after it. This doesn't happen overnight. It's like training a muscle. But the results are transformational. Take a runner training for a marathon. At first, every run is a struggle. They might rely on energizing music, pre-run snacks, or motivational quotes just to get going. But after a few months of consistent effort, running in silence, in the cold, without any extras, they start to feel something deeper, a quiet sense of pride, a mental toughness. They've built something that no song or coffee could give them. They've built the ability to do hard things because their dopamine is coming from effort, not reward. This shift is subtle but powerful. If you can learn to delay the reward until after the work is done, you flip the script on your dopamine system. You train your brain to release that motivating chemical during the challenge, not just in anticipation of an easy payoff. Suddenly, writing a report or studying for 2 hours feels less like punishment and more like progress. Your mind stops negotiating because the reward is no longer needed up front. You're wired to move, not wait. Now, picture your average workday. Let's say you're someone who struggles to get started, constantly distracted. You sit down to write that report, but you can't resist checking your phone. You play music to make the task feel better. You grab a snack. Suddenly, an hour has passed and you've done almost nothing. That's not because you're lazy. It's because your brain is craving dopamine before it earns it. It wants to feel good before the effort begins. Now imagine this instead. You sit down and start the work in silence. No music, no stimulation. It feels a bit uncomfortable, but you push through. You get into the zone. 45 minutes go by and you've made solid progress. Then you reward yourself with a walk, a good meal, a moment of rest. That post-effort reward now feels earned, not given. And your brain takes notice. It starts to link dopamine to action, not avoidance. This is how you train grit. This is how you build real, lasting motivation. Not just when things are easy, but when they're difficult and uncomfortable. So the next time you're tempted to hype yourself up with a pre-work dopamine hit, stop. Do the thing first. Let the effort become the source of satisfaction. Because once you start finding joy and discipline in the grind, in the pursuit, you'll no longer depend on external motivation. You'll be driven by something far more powerful, your own biology rewired for purpose. Most people think of cold exposure like cold showers or ice baths as some hardcore, extreme discipline only used by Navy SEALs or elite athletes. But what if I told you that exposing yourself to cold, even for just a couple of minutes, could naturally elevate your dopamine levels by up to 250%, and not in a short burst like sugar or social media, but in a sustained way that lasts for hours? That's not hype, that's neuroscience. And once you understand this, you'll realize that the cold isn't something to fear. It's a hidden key to unlocking energy, motivation, and mental resilience you didn't even know you had. Let's take a moment and think about how most of us start our mornings. We wake up tired, reach for caffeine, then scroll endlessly, trying to force ourselves into a state of alertness. But the truth is, dopamine doesn't just appear. It needs a trigger. Cold exposure is that trigger. It forces your nervous system into action. When your body hits cold water, whether it's a cold shower or even a splash of icy water on your face, it activates your sympathetic nervous system. Your brain lights up, your heart rate increases. But here's the beautiful part, your dopamine levels don't just spike, they rise steadily and stay elevated long after the cold is gone. Unlike artificial stimulants that give you a short-term high and a crash, cold creates momentum. Now let's ground this in daily life. Imagine you're someone who struggles with morning fatigue or low motivation. You've tried all the hacks, coffee, energy drinks, music, motivational videos, but you still feel stuck. You're dragging through your tasks, procrastinating, frustrated. Then one day you decide to take a 2-minute cold shower. It's hard, your body resists it, your mind screams get out, but you stay. And when you step out, something has shifted. Your eyes are sharper, your brain is awake, you feel alive. That morning, without needing to scroll or sip caffeine, you're more productive than usual. You feel driven. Why? Because you just earned your dopamine the hard way, and your brain rewards you for it. That's the magic of cold exposure. It's immediate, it's natural, and it teaches your body and mind to generate energy from within. No apps, no sugar, no shortcuts, just you and the elements. But beyond the biology, there's a deeper benefit here, one that goes beyond dopamine. Every time you step into cold, you're stepping into discomfort, you're choosing the harder path. And that choice repeated day after day builds mental toughness. It sends a signal to your subconscious, I can do hard things. I can face resistance. I don't need everything to be comfortable. And that changes how you approach the rest of your life. The email you've been avoiding suddenly feels easier. The workout you didn't want to do becomes manageable. The big project at work doesn't seem so overwhelming. Why? Because you've already conquered something at the start of your day. And your brain remembers that. You don't have to start with an ice bath. Even ending your shower with 30 seconds of cold water can initiate this response. The point isn't to punish yourself, it's to reawaken the systems inside you that have gone dormant from too much comfort. We live in a world that's constantly feeding us convenience, warmth, pleasure on demand. But that lifestyle dulls our edge, it steals our resilience. Cold gives it back. So the next time you feel unmotivated, foggy, low on energy, don't reach for your phone. Don't pour another cup of coffee, step into the cold, embrace the discomfort, train your body to create its own drive. And with consistency, you'll discover that motivation doesn't have to come from the outside. It's already inside you waiting to be activated by a little controlled discomfort and a lot of courage. We live in a time where everything is new, everything is instant, and everything is always just one swipe away. But here's the truth nobody talks about. Constant novelty is quietly destroying your brain's ability to focus, stay motivated, and feel real satisfaction. Every time you bounce from one app to another, switch tasks every few minutes, or chase the next exciting thing, you're teaching your brain that the only way to feel good is through something new. And that's a dangerous habit, because in real life, the kind that builds careers, relationships, and personal mastery, rewards come slowly. They come from repetition, discipline, and patience. That's why if you want to unlock the power of dopamine for true motivation and fulfillment, you must start using novelty intentionally, not constantly. Let's take an example you've probably lived through. You sit down to work on an important task, maybe it's writing a proposal, studying for an exam, or building your side hustle. 10 minutes in, you feel restless. Your brain whispers, just check Instagram, just a little. So you do, 5 minutes turn into 15, then TikTok, then a quick YouTube video. And when you finally try to go back to work, it feels impossible. Your focus is scattered, your energy's low, you feel irritated and uninspired. Why does this happen? Because your brain just got a flood of dopamine from novelty, and now the task in front of you, which requires sustained attention and delayed gratification, feels flat and unrewarding by comparison. That's the cost of using novelty recklessly. You're teaching your dopamine system to expect instant rewards. And when they don't come, your drive disappears. You feel like you have ADHD. But you don't, you just have a brain that's been wired for distraction. Now, imagine using novelty like a tool, not a trap. Imagine breaking your work into 90-minute focus blocks during which you don't touch your phone or change tabs. You do one thing deeply, and after you complete that block, you give yourself a brief, intentional dose of novelty, maybe a walk outside, a favorite song, a light conversation, even a quick scroll on your feed. That little burst of novelty now feels earned. It refreshes you. It doesn't sabotage your focus, it recharges it. Because it's not controlling you, you're controlling it. This is what it means to use novelty strategically. When you treat novelty as a reward instead of a constant background noise, you protect the sensitivity of your dopamine system. You preserve your ability to find joy and consistency, to stay focused on one thing at a time, and to feel deeply satisfied after real progress. Here's another way to look at it. Think about a child who gets a new toy every day. At first, they're excited, but within days, they stop appreciating the toys. Nothing feels special. Now think about the child who gets one new toy after weeks of saving up or waiting for a special occasion. They cherish it, they play with it for hours. That's how your dopamine system works. Constant novelty dulls it, intentional novelty enhances it. So if you want to rebuild your focus, fuel your motivation, and start enjoying the journey again, stop flooding your brain with endless newness. Cut back on constant content hopping. Stop switching tasks every time you feel bored. Instead, dive deep into one thing. Give it your full attention. And then once you've earned it, give your brain a little novelty, just enough to feel refreshed, not overstimulated. Because when novelty becomes a reward, not an addiction, you start training your brain to find meaning in effort again. You begin to rediscover the beauty of progress, the pride in consistency, and the peace that comes when you're no longer chasing stimulation, but creating something that lasts. And that, right there, is how you regain control of your mind and your life. Think about the last time you achieved something that really mattered. Maybe you finished a big project, got in shape, passed a tough exam, or built something from scratch. Remember how good it felt, not just because you succeeded, but because you earned it. That deep, lasting satisfaction didn't come from someone giving you a reward or clapping for you. It came from the effort you put in day after day. That feeling, that glow that stays with you long after the moment is gone, is dopamine working the way it was designed to. Not from external rewards, but from internal wins. And that's one of the most powerful mental shifts you can make, learning how to get your dopamine from the process, not the prize. You see, the world teaches us to chase rewards. Get the grade, get the likes, get the paycheck, get the body. And there's nothing wrong with wanting success. But when you tie all your motivation to outcomes, when your drive only kicks in if there's a visible prize waiting at the finish line, you set yourself up for burnout. Because outcomes are unpredictable. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, but effort, that's always within your control. And when you start learning to enjoy effort, not just tolerate it, you unlock an entirely different level of resilience. Let me give you a real life example. Think of someone training for a marathon. In the beginning, every run is hard. Their legs hurt, their lungs burn, there's no applause, no medals, just sweat and discomfort. If they were only running for the trophy, they'd probably quit by week 2. But something happens when they start. Falling in love with the daily grind, the early mornings, the discipline, the slow, steady progress. Their brain starts to release dopamine during the training, not just at the finish line. Suddenly, showing up becomes its own reward. And when race day comes, win or lose, they already feel accomplished because the real reward was built over weeks of effort, not handed out in one moment. This applies to every part of life. Whether you're building a business, learning a skill, or improving your mental health, there will be days when progress is invisible. Days when nobody notices, days when it feels like nothing is happening. If your motivation depends on being recognized or achieving a result, you'll struggle. But if you find a way to attach dopamine to the process, to showing up, pushing through, and growing, you'll have an edge that can't be taken away. Let's break it down with something as simple as studying. 2 students sit down for the same exam. One hates every minute of preparation and tells herself, "I'll be happy when it's over and I pass." The other one decides to track small wins, understanding a tough concept, solving a tricky problem, going an extra hour without distraction. She learns to enjoy the mini victories, not just the final grade. Who do you think lasts longer? Who comes out stronger? The second student, because she doesn't wait for external validation to feel good. She's generating dopamine from the effort itself. And the beautiful thing is, this is trainable. You can actually rewire your brain to love effort. You can start celebrating progress, not perfection. You can take pride in the reps, the practice, the quiet hours when no. Let's break it down with something as simple as studying. 2 students sit down for the same exam. One hates every minute of preparation and tells herself, "I'll be happy when it's over and I pass." The other one decides to track small wins, understanding a tough concept, solving a tricky problem, going an extra hour without distraction. She learns to enjoy the mini victories, not just the final grade. Who do you think lasts longer? Who comes out stronger? The second student, because she doesn't wait for external validation to feel good. She's generating dopamine from the effort itself. And the beautiful thing is, this is trainable. You can actually rewire your brain to love effort. You can start celebrating progress, not perfection. You can take pride in the reps, the practice, the quiet hours when no one is watching. When you do that, you stop chasing motivation, you become motivation. Because now your dopamine isn't held hostage by some future success, it's alive right now in the work you're doing. So stop waiting for the reward to feel good. Let effort become the reward. Let the grind be where your joy lies. Because when you start generating your own internal wins, you won't just be more productive, you'll be unstoppable. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you begin to understand the connection between your body and your brain, especially when it comes to movement. Most people separate physical activity from mental well-being, thinking the gym is just for weight loss or building muscles. But what if I told you that even a brisk walk or 5 minutes of movement could profoundly impact your brain's dopamine system? And in turn, your motivation, your ability to focus, and your emotional stability? This is not just theory, it's neuroscience, and it might be the simplest, most overlooked tool you have to change your entire day. Imagine you're stuck, mentally foggy. You can't seem to focus, and your to-do list feels like a mountain you're too tired to climb. You reach for coffee, maybe scroll your phone, maybe complain to yourself. But what if in that moment you just got up and moved? Not even a full workout, just a walk around the block, some jumping jacks, a few minutes of stretching, or a quick pace up and down the stairs. Almost immediately, your brain chemistry would spats because movement triggers a cascade of neurological changes, particularly in the dopamine and norepinephrine systems. These chemicals are responsible for alertness, drive, and the feeling of being on. When you move, especially with intention, your brain doesn't just wake up, it sharpens. You become more focused, your mood lifts, and your energy stabilizes. This isn't just about feeling better, it's about creating a mental environment that supports productivity and resilience. Think about it. Animals in nature don't sit still when they need to act, they move. That's biology, and humans are no different. Our brain was designed to reward movement because movement meant survival. That same wiring still exists today. The only difference, we've forgotten to use it. Let's make it even more real. Think about how you feel after a sedentary day, working at a desk, scrolling through your phone, binge watching a show. You might be physically still, but your mind feels exhausted. That's because without movement, your dopamine system becomes stagnant, the motivation tank dries up, you start feeling restless, distracted, maybe even anxious or low. Now contrast that with how you feel after a bike ride, a dance session in your room, or even just a long walk outside. Suddenly, the fog clears, you have ideas, you feel a spark, you want to take action. That's not a coincidence, that's dopamine in action. And the most empowering part, you don't need a gym, you don't need a trainer, you don't need perfect conditions. All you need is your body and a decision to move, to get out of your head and into your body, even if only for a few minutes. Do this consistently and you'll begin to rewire your brain to associate movement with mental clarity and emotional strength. This is why some of the most successful people in the world use movement as a non-negotiable part of their day. Not just to stay fit, but to stay sharp, to stay emotionally balanced, to stay in a state of emotional drive and focus. They know that every time they move, they're not just strengthening their body, they're training their mind to rise above distraction and reactivity. So if you're feeling stuck, low, or overwhelmed, the answer might not be in another podcast or another scroll, it might just be in your legs. Stand up, walk, stretch, breathe deeply as you move. Let your body become the switch that turns your brain back on. Over time, this habit of using movement as a trigger will become second nature. You'll stop waiting for motivation to strike and start generating it with every step you take. And that's when everything begins to change. One of the most misunderstood truths about motivation is that people think they need to feel ready before they act, that some internal spark has to ignite first. That motivation is something you wait for. But here's what the science and life actually shows. Action doesn't follow motivation. Motivation follows action. And the key to sustaining that motivation is something incredibly simple, yet often neglected: tracking your wins. Even the small ones, especially the small ones, because every time you complete something, no matter how tiny, your brain registers it as a success. It releases dopamine. That dopamine becomes fuel, and that fuel drives more action. It's a feedback loop, one that you control entirely. Let's start with a common scenario. You wake up with a long to-do list and the pressure hits you right away. Maybe it's studying for an exam, finishing a report, calling clients, or cleaning your space. You feel overwhelmed, so you freeze, maybe you procrastinate, hours go by, you beat yourself up for being lazy. But what if instead you chose to tackle the smallest possible task, just 5 minutes of effort, and then wrote it down as a win? That tiny check mark, that little completed box, sends a signal to your brain, we're making progress. And progress, even if it's small, is addictive in the best way. It creates the very motivation you thought you needed to start. Think about how powerful that is. You don't have to wait for a wave of inspiration to begin. You can build momentum through action, and when you combine that with a simple habit tracking what you complete, you create a snowball effect. Your brain begins to associate your effort with reward. That's not just psychological, it's chemical. Dopamine is being released, reinforcing the behavior. And unlike the dopamine hits you get from social media or junk food, this one builds you up instead of burning you out. It works in every area of life. Take fitness. Most people quit their health goals not because they're lazy, but because they feel like their effort isn't paying off fast enough. They don't see immediate physical changes, so they get discouraged. But if they track the fact that they showed up to the gym today, that they drank enough water, that they made one healthy meal, that's a win. The scale might not move overnight, but the internal reward system gets activated. And when your brain starts to crave that feeling of progress, sticking with the plan becomes easier. Or think about someone trying to write a book. The idea of finishing 300 pages is intimidating. But writing one page today, that's doable. And if you track that page, celebrate it even mentally, you'll feel good enough to come back tomorrow. The win becomes the trigger for more effort. Over time, those small completions stack up. They build confidence. They teach your brain that you are someone who follows through. This is why checklist journals, progress bars, they aren't just tools. They're motivational weapons. They visually reinforce what your brain craves: closure, completion, and proof of growth. And when you get addicted to that kind of feedback, your motivation becomes self-generating. You stop waiting for the stars to align. You stop needing outside praise. You begin to act because the act itself feels good. because each action feeds into a cycle of motivation, action, and satisfaction. So if you feel stuck or unmotivated or like you can't finish what you start, don't try to change everything overnight. Just pick one thing, do it, track it, celebrate it, then do it again tomorrow. Let that small win light the fire. And before long, you won't just be moving, you'll be unstoppable. Because you'll have discovered the most powerful source of motivation there is, the satisfaction of showing up, doing the work, and seeing your own growth one small win at a time. Every day, we are flooded with information, noise, notifications, opinions, headlines, and endless distractions pulling at our attention. The world we live in is designed to hijack your focus, to scatter your thoughts, to fragment your peace, and to keep you in a constant state of reactivity. But if there's one decision that can radically transform your motivation, focus, and sense of purpose, it's this: you must protect your dopamine system by carefully curating what you consume. What you feed your mind matters just as much as what you feed your body. And in the same way junk food makes you sluggish and sick over time, junk input destroys your ability to concentrate, stay driven, and feel genuinely fulfilled. Think about it. How often do you scroll through social media and leave feeling energized, focused, or inspired? More often you feel drained, distracted, or worse, like you're not doing enough with your life. And that's because your brain is being bombarded with dopamine spikes from fast-paced content, highlight reels, clickbait, outrage, and endless novelty. These short bursts of stimulation create a false sense of engagement, but they're actually making your brain lazy. They desensitize you to real effort like building a business, learning a skill, or developing a strong relationship requires sustained attention. It's slow, repetitive, and doesn't offer instant payoff. When your dopamine system is trained to only respond to quick hits of entertainment, the real meaningful parts of life start to feel boring. And that's the trap. But here's the good news: just like you can clean up your diet and feel better physically, you can clean up your information diet and feel better mentally. You can begin to take back control by being intentional with what you allow into your mind. Start small. Limit your exposure to shallow, overstimulating content. Follow creators and pages that actually teach you something or inspire you to grow. Spend more time listening to long-form, in-depth conversations instead of scrolling through reels. Read books instead of summaries. Watch content that deepens your understanding, not just your desire to be entertained. The difference in how you feel and how you perform will be immediate. Let's use a simple daily example. Imagine two people waking up in the morning. One rolls over and immediately checks their phone. Within 5 minutes, they've consumed 20 different opinions, headlines, videos, and images. Their mind is already cluttered. Their dopamine system is already spiked, and their focus for the day is already compromised. The other person wakes up, drinks water, maybe goes for a walk or journals, and reads 10 pages of a book or listens to a podcast on a topic they care about. Their dopamine system ramps up slowly, steadily, in alignment with their goals. One of them feels anxious and scattered by 9 a.m. The other feels grounded and focused. That difference didn't come from genetics, it came from intention. When you curate what you consume, you become the gatekeeper of your own mental environment. You no longer allow the algorithms and outrage culture to decide what occupies your headspace. And that's one of the most empowering habits you can develop. Because when your brain is no longer overstimulated by trash input, it becomes more responsive to the beauty of real life, the satisfaction of deep work, the joy of personal growth, the clarity of quiet moments. Your attention becomes stronger, your goals become clearer, and your motivation begins to come from a deeper, more stable place. So be ruthless about what you consume. Protect your mind like you would protect your home, because once your focus is gone, everything else becomes harder. But when you feed your mind the right fuel, you unlock a mental clarity that makes everything feel more possible. You become less reactive, more deliberate, and infinitely more powerful. This isn't about quitting all media. It's about curating your media, shaping your inputs to serve your highest self. Because when you do that, you're not just protecting your dopamine, you're reclaiming your potential.